Are you done Christmas shopping?
No, I'm about half done,
No.
and the people that matter are the ones that I have the least amount of gifts for. So
So you have nothing for me, that's what you're saying?
that's what I'm saying.
Uh-huh. So, alright, I have, like, this big gift I wanna get, but I was looking at my phone earlier, and then I was on Facebook, and I saw this meme, and it was something about, like, my most toxic millennial trait is that all big purchases must be done on a computer.
Oh my god. But it's so true. Like, I feel like you need to see the whole screen to
Yes, you gotta
understand what you're
compare
getting into.
things and, like, then you gotta be able to click between tabs real easily. I was like, "Oh, I gotta wait until I get to work, get on my desktop."
I have like $100 limit. Like if it's $100 or less, I can do it on my phone. But once it gets into triple digits, I start to feel sick to my stomach afterward.
It's called being fiscally responsible.
Oh, well, I'm not that.
Someone who owes Discover more than I care to admit, neither am I.
33, 1, 0. The main event of the evening. Wednesday, and half past
It's Tuesday, and you're listening to Murder Unscripted.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Murder Unscripted, the podcast that immerses you in the true crime genre like never before. Or so we think. Maybe there are other podcasts that do, but why would you even listen to those?
Yeah, they're dumb. Yeah.
Anyway, I am your host, Ed Hydock, along with my co host, the lovely Melissa Spivey.
You know what? It's the holidays and I'm feeling charitable. So you are lovely, my friend.
Wow. Make note, people, at whatever time code this is, Melissa paid me a compliment. Remember
Write
that.
this down, y'all. I was gonna say record it, but we're doing that.
When it's
So.
already recorded. Well, thank you for that. I'll take it in any form I can get it. This episode's actually going to be dropping on Tuesday, which is 12/24, Christmas Eve, when everybody's frantically wrapping those giant gifts that no one knows how to wrap. If you're listening today, we can't thank you enough for spending your Christmas Eve with us, and I think that's a great way to listen. Sit down on the floor, wrap some gifts, and listen to tales of death and destruction.
Ah, the holidays.
Regardless, we do hope you're having a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday season.
And like I just said, now we are here to ruin it with a tragic true crime case. So it's great.
Fantastic.
No,
Yeah.
actually, no. Today is a survivor story. It totally worked out that like it fell on this day. And because we had covered survivor stories back in our fourth block, and we actually ended up releasing a bonus episode that month.
Hmm.
And you know what? I think that episode on Terry, Jendus, and Nicola was like one of my favorite ones we've done so far.
I
Just
agree.
because her story was so crazy and it really was such a miracle that she survived everything she went through, but it was just wild from start to finish.
The shit she went through is just, you can't even, unspeakable. But, so after that, we also covered we had an amazing interview with Shannon Myers Barrientos, who survived a horrible attack by a man who had already killed less than a year prior to her attack. Freaking wild.
Well, all right. So for our survivor case today, we are going back to the 1990s, which, as everyone knows, is my favorite decade. And you know what? If you are on the fence or you're not really sure or you're even against the death penalty before you hear this case, I'm not going to say it's going to change your mind, but I feel like this will, at the very least, make you go, maybe this guy might have deserved it a little bit. But again, like we said, the good news is we have a survivor story. The bad news is we still have a brutal and utterly senseless murder, and we have a bad guy who should literally win an award for being like the douchiest and dumbest, most arrogant human in the entire world.
Yeah, I feel like you say that every week. Like the perps in your stories are breaking that record like every week.
Oh, just wait. I don't know. It's going to be a tie between this week and next week. Like,
Yeah. Can't wait.
Well, I do have a few trigger warnings. We have extreme violence, and we have sexual assault and rape of a minor. We also have some really horrendous racial slurs that I won't say out loud, some of which I had never even heard. Um, and also, let this episode remind everyone that if you're shitty, karma is so gonna come for you. Like,
You
you
will.
cannot outrun it.
No, and it gets you in ways you don't expect to.
Mm-hmm. All right, so to kick our case off, we are going to go back to Friday, January 29th, 1999. And it's about 4:15 in the afternoon, and a man named Robert Culver, he's just getting home from work. He lives in Manassas, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes like southwest of Washington, D.C. And it's finally the weekend, and Robert had actually been dealing with a cold, so like he wasn't feeling great. And I'm sure he's just like counting down the seconds till the end of the day,
Right.
wants to get home and relax. So he pulls into his driveway, and he shares his home with his fiance, a woman named Lorraine Reed, and Lorraine's two teenage daughters, 16-year-old Stacie Lynn Reed and 14-year-old Kristie Reed.
Well, but that's a crazy house. Guy and remarried with two teenage stepdaughters. Holy cow.
I know. That's a
Wow.
lot. So Robert goes inside, and he's probably expecting the girls to be like watching TV or hanging out, whatever. But as he walks in, he realizes the house is really quiet. And like you said, with a house full of 3 women, I'm sure there are very few quiet moments. So he starts walking around the house, calling out for Stacie and Kristie, but he doesn't get any response. So he walks into Stacie's bedroom, and just to put it out there, I believe that in this house, the girls' bedrooms were on the main floor. So he like had walked through the kitchen, walked through the living room, walking down the hall, and that's where the girls' bedrooms are.
Okay.
So he walks into Stacie's bedroom, and it's like trashed, like, and not just like normal teenage kid trash. Like, stuff is knocked over, things are broken, Stacie's stuff's all over the floor.
Hmm.
And Robert's like looking around, and he can tell that something happened, something probably not good. So he starts yelling for the girls, and he frantically rushes like across the hall into Kristie's room. He flicks the light on, and I can only imagine like the next thing he sees is probably forever burned in his memory. Like, certain things, I feel like you close your eyes and you see it.
I'm
And
sure.
there, lying on the floor, completely lifeless, is 16-year-old Stacie. She's just covered in blood.
God.
And Robert can tell that Stacie is not breathing. So he is frantically running around the house looking for the phone. And it's a
Sure.
cordless phone. And I cannot tell you how many times I like put ours somewhere so dumb we couldn't find it.
I want to, like, it's the same way with remote controls now. I want to nail them to a 2x4 so that
Yes.
you cannot lose them.
Exactly. And like, and remember, this is 1999, so like everyone still had landlines. Like, very
Mhm.
few people had just cell phones. So again, I don't know the full layout of the house, but Robert is like running around looking for the phone. He ends up running down to the basement, still in a panic. He just wants to call 911, and he gets to the bottom of the basement steps. And again, I'm sure this like knocks the wind right out of him. There, laying on the basement floor, is the bloody and bound body of 14-year-old Kristie.
Both of them.
Both of them. Robert rushes over to her, and he is horrified to see that her throat is slit and blood is like pouring out of her neck and her stomach. But despite all the blood and like these disturbing, like gruesome injuries, Kristie is alive. Barely, but she's alive.
That crime must have just happened. You know, like
Mhm.
Robert probably came home literally minutes before this horrific attack.
Literally minutes. Like,
Wow.
honestly, I believe, I don't know if that I mentioned this later, but he got home probably about 15-20 minutes after it happened, if that.
Man, that's nuts.
He calls 911, police and medics arrive, and as they're working to save Kristie's life, one of the officers or one of the EMTs asks Kristie who did this. And somehow, despite her throat being slit, this amazing little girl is able to mouth Paul Powell.
Wow.
Yeah. And with that, Kristie is whisked away, actually via helicopter, to a hospital. And at this point, they don't know whether she's gonna survive or not. Like it's all up in the air. But
Sure.
I'm not gonna keep you in suspense. Kristie is our survivor in this
All
episode,
right.
and this 14-year-old girl is fucking incredible.
I can't even imagine the stuff that she went through and managed to survive. I mean, but also, isn't it game over for the story? Didn't you just tell us who did it?
Oh my goodness, we have not even like scratched the surface. Like,
Wow.
I told you who did it, but this is going to be a trial heavy episode,
Oh,
but it's a good one, I promise.
okay. I'm believing you. I'm trusting you.
Yikes. Yikes, that's all I got to say. All right, so I told you what happened with the crime. So we're going to go back to the beginning and talk about like what led us to this horrible scene that poor Robert came home to. All right, so I'm going to start with the Culver and Reed family, which, as I said earlier, is comprised of Robert Culver, his fiancee Lorraine, and her two daughters, Stacie and Kristie. And there's not like a ton of information about the family and their life before this horrific tragedy, but I do know that both Stacie and Kristie were good kids. Like, they did really well in school, they stayed out of trouble, they were just genuinely good, sweet young women. So 16-year-old Stacie, she was born on August 21st, 1982. So at the time of our story, she's in high school.
Hmm.
And she had really big ambitions. And she was putting in the work to like make these dreams a reality. Like, her goal was actually to become the first female Navy SEAL, which is like so badass.
That's also a killer dream. I mean, go for it. Shoot for the moon, girl.
Right? Like,
Wow.
she was, and like, as I said, like, she was actively working towards this. It wasn't just like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
She
Like, I
was
want to be an
in,
astronaut. Yeah.
right. Like, she was actually in the junior ROTC program.
Good for her.
Yeah. And she loved it. And she was doing really well in it. And she was super cute. She had, like, really light blonde hair. And she had these big, big blue eyes. And she actually wore her hair really short, like shaved, for the ROTC,
Hmm.
and she could pull it off. Like,
She could rock it.
yeah, like she
Mm.
didn't have like a lumpy head. Like, I have a lumpy head.
Oh my
I could
God. I
not
found
rock
something
that.
on my head the other day too. I gave myself a haircut and I was like, what is this ding now?
What is that? What is this ding? We have talked about head trauma in serial killers,
I think I
but
have it.
moving on. So Stacie has a steady boyfriend. His name is Sean Wilkerson, and he and his family had actually just moved like out of town. But Stacie and Sean, they really liked each other, so they had decided to still see each other and try to make long distance work to see what was going, see if it worked.
Mhm.
And actually, Stacie had a military ball coming up that she was really excited for, and of course, like, she was going to bring Sean as her handsome date. So clearly, Stacie had a lot going for her. Like, she was bright, cheerful, ambitious, and she was just seemed to be on track to become like this confident, amazing, and strong woman.
Definitely seems like she was on her way.
Right? Like, the whole Navy SEAL thing, that's so freaking
It's awesome.
badass.
It is.
So our survivor, Kristie, also equally as badass. So she's 14 at the time of our story, and Kristie and Stacie so much reminded me of Jody and Risa from Block 3 about the wrongfully suspected.
Hmm.
Like, I'm reading about them and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm having like flashbacks to that episode.
They had such a tight bond, the two of them.
Yes. And that's what I mean. Like, Stacie and Kristie were super close and like they were genuinely best friends. And like their bond was just so reminiscent of Jody and Risa.
That's so cool. It really is. I mean, so I don't have a sister, obviously, and I'm also a male.
Oh,
So,
thanks for clearing that up.
in case you couldn't tell, from everything I've seen from the women in my life and just people I've known over the years, I feel like the bond between sisters is one of the strongest relationships that exist. And maybe it's because they've grown up together, you've shared memories and experiences, and you confide in each other. You talk about boys. You share secrets, you share dreams, and it's just one of those
Yeah.
relationships that even when you have your differences, you're still ride or die at the end of the day.
I think that's absolutely 100% true. I also feel like with sisters, it's either like amazingly awesome relationship or like so hate each other.
Oh, so everything I said is wrong.
No, I feel like it's just like either like one extreme or the other.
Oh, there's no just like, yeah, we're kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. So Kristie was in 8th grade, and just like Stacie, she was and still honestly is adorable with like light blonde hair and big blue eyes. I watched an episode of I Survived, and
Hmm.
Kristie's on it, and as an adult, she reminds me of the Fanning sisters, like
Oh,
Dakota and Elle
Dakota.
Fanning.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like so much like both of them,
Wow.
really.
Neat.
Just super cute. But this girl went through hell at the hands of Paul Powell. And
Mm.
actually, in every TV show, like you can very clearly see what she went, like the scars on her neck where she was stabbed and what
Oh,
she went
wow.
through.
Yeah.
And you know what? And not that she like shows it off, but I think, wears it proudly. Like she's
Hmm.
just stunning.
Her story is so powerful. So I guarantee this wasn't her first time on television on I Survived, but it's
Yeah.
still, despite that, it had to be really, really hard for her to go on and relive this. So in my experience, every time someone tells a story, things come flooding back. So it doesn't matter if it's the first time or the sixth time, they're hard to tell. So I'm sure it was rough for her to participate in that.
Oh, I'm sure. And you know what? When you're watching the shows, you don't think about that. Like as the viewer, you don't think about them not only having to continuously talk about it, but also like how much it has to bring up. Like that just has to be so mentally, emotionally, and even physically draining. So now let's talk about like our final main player in this case, and that's Paul Powell.
I can't wait to hear this guy's story already.
Oh, his story is I'm a bag of shit, the end.
Oh,
Yeah.
quick story.
Once upon a time. Yeah. So, Paul Warner Powell, he was a neighbor of the girls, and I can say with 100% confidence that this moldy chunk of sewer sludge has zero, absolutely zero redeeming qualities.
No, one of those.
Oh, yeah. Like,
Hmm.
so Paul was born on April 13th, 1978. And there's not much about his childhood except for like what is briefly mentioned in court records. And I believe he lived with his mother and his younger brother. I'm not sure if his father was in the picture. Paul had several run ins with the law prior to the appalling crimes we're discussing today. During his trial, a psychologist who had worked with Paul referred to his upbringing as, quote, toxic. There was no official diagnosis given for him, but
Hmm.
the psychologist hypothesized that like his clinical history could indicate antisocial personality disorder. Well, non-Dr. Melissa says he was just trash. And the worst kind of trash, as he was wildly racist.
Oh, God.
And he proudly told people he was a neo-Nazi white supremacist.
You gotta be kidding. Like, what's with we've been on the racism train the past 2 weeks. That Carol Stewart story out
I
of Boston.
know.
Holy cow, what is going on? But I feel like there's a difference between being kind of low key intolerant and just completely outwardly disrespecting a race. And it sounds like when you announce that you're a neo-Nazi white supremacist, like that's a different level of racist that says a lot about somebody's upbringing, which was
Mhm.
toxic according to the court records. So toxic checks out. I mean, sounds like it's on brand for this guy.
Agreed. And again, like I don't know what, his family life was like. Like I kind of read some things online which were just from random commenters who claimed they knew the family that he had a normal upbringing. So I don't know. There's just not enough information out there.
You're taught that. Like
Yeah,
you don't
no,
just grow
you're
up
right.
racist. You're taught that or something happens and it makes you intolerant.
Yeah, no. So I don't know what happened with him. He was just a terrible, terrible person. And like, as if being like racist wasn't terrible enough, he was also a predator. I mean, at the time of our case, Paul was 20 years old, and this grown ass man had a huge crush on Stacie, 16-year-old Stacie. And I fully understand that, once you get older, 4 years is not a big deal at all. 10 years isn't a big deal at all. But at that age, that's a
Mhm.
big ass deal.
I was a senior in high school dating a sophomore, and I was terrified because it's like you're almost the same age, so you feel like a normal couple, you know?
Mhm.
But technically, I mean, if you
Yeah.
wanna, you know?
Back to Paul and Stacie, like, I actually think it went past a crush, though. Like, I think it went into obsession,
Mhm.
personally. And Stacie was, like, friendly with Paul, but really only because they were neighbors, and, like, when everyone was younger, the neighborhood kids would hang out together, and Paul had dropped out of high school at some point, and while he had gotten his GED, he had absolutely no aspirations nor any plans to, like, make anything of himself.
Hmm.
In the I Survived episode, Kristie talks about how Paul would, like, always have a knife on him, and they would just be, like, sitting there, and he would take it out and play with it all the time.
How uncomfortable.
Yeah, and other reports said that, like, he would have a firearm on him, like, very often, just, like, randomly, not
Yeah.
because you were going somewhere unsafe, just, like, carrying it around all the time.
Hmm.
And Paul just made people very uncomfortable, just his background, his racist beliefs, and he was also just gross.
Well, that was his goal. I mean, that's why he did those things to intimidate people. It was something that was his
Yeah.
reasoning. Yeah.
Absolutely, but, like, even just, like, with all that, like, just looking at him, you're like, "Ew, take a bath, dirtball." Like, he looked grimy, and he had one of those nasty, like, crustaches, like, he couldn't grow actual facial hair,
Yeah,
so
I
he
know the
just
ones.
had, like, those gross, like, pube-looking hairs on his top
God,
lip.
the worst. The
Ugh,
worst.
gross. Ugh, ugh. So, 14-year-old Kristie is especially uncomfortable with Paul. And actually, the day before the attack and murder, Kristie had a run-in with Paul that left her really uneasy.
No
So
way.
Paul had been hanging out at the house, like, with the sisters, like, more so with Stacie. Although I did get the impression that, like, these hangouts were just really him showing up uninvited.
Because why else would these, like, good girls, seemingly, hang out with this racist asshole?
Exactly. Like, I feel like it was just kind of like, here he is again.
Mhm.
So Stacie, Kristie, and Paul are home alone, and then Stacie has to leave for work. So she's like, okay, like, bye, I'm leaving, like, let's
Mhm.
go. But even after she is gone, like, Paul just won't leave. And he's just like walking around the house, pacing up and down the hallway, going into the girls' bedrooms,
What a
and
weirdo.
yeah, and Christy's freaked out. So she calls her mom at work and she's like, he won't leave. And she's just not feeling good about him being there. She's incredibly uncomfortable. And Christy's mom is like, you can tell him to get out. Like, tell him right now, go home. And, Christy is kind of apprehensive. And I totally get that because, yes, it's her house, but she's a 14-year-old girl, like, attempting to throw a grown man out of her house. Like, that to me, that would be so intimidating.
For mom to put her 14-year-old in that situation kinda sucks too, and I get that she's at work, but that would be very scary for me if my child called and said, "There's someone in the house." I get that he's a neighbor and everybody knows him, but he's weirding me out. That would
Yeah.
I think I would drive home and deal with it. I'm not blaming anyone for anything, but I think I would treat that a little more seriously.
Right. And ultimately, I don't know what happened after, Christy had told him to leave, and I guess that he did. But I don't know if the mom did come home. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know. There wasn't anything else past that in the reporting.
Okay.
So luckily he did leave that day. But now we're back to the day we started, Friday, January 29th, 1999. And I am going to go through this with what actually happened that day, even though it would take Paul a few years to actually admit everything. But rather
Mm.
than telling you like two separate stories, I'm going to tell you the
Mhm.
whole thing straight through.
Okay.
So, shortly before noon that day, Stacie got home from school. Like, she had had exams, and I guess the students were, like, allowed to leave for the day when they were done. So, she gets home, and there's Paul, creepy-ass Paul, just, like, sitting on her porch, and he's drinking, as one does at 11:45 in the morning
Sunday
when you're
Funday.
20 years old. Like, So Stacie gets home and she's like, hey, great to see ya, but you should probably go home because Robert is going to be home soon for lunch. Remember, Robert's her mom's fiance, and like he worked super close by, so he would come home on his lunch hour. So Paul leaves because, you know, he doesn't want to get caught drinking at 11:45 in the morning by her stepdad.
Right.
Right. So Paul leaves, Robert gets home, you know, eats his lunch, whatever, and he goes back to work. Well, creepy Paul must have been watching because he comes right back to Stacie's house when
Oh
Robert
my
leaves.
God.
Well, and it gets worse. Like, he just straight up lets himself in the house.
The guy won't stop.
No, like, this is what I mean, where it goes past a crush into, like, an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So he just creepishly lets himself in the house, and he realizes Stacie's on the phone with her boyfriend, Sean. So Paul lays down on the couch to wait for Stacie, and one thing I did not mention earlier about Sean is black.
Right.
And I shouldn't have had to mention it because it ultimately doesn't matter, but to a self-proclaimed neo-Nazi white supremacist who would brag that Hitler was one of his heroes, the color of Sean's skin did matter. And it really pissed Paul off that Stacie, the girl he wanted and the girl he felt like he deserved to be with, was dating someone of another race.
This is so infuriating to me. And I feel like we talked enough about racism last week that we don't really need to go into the hows and whys again. But I will say that without even knowing what happens, it's a recipe for disaster. Because if you're a racist with an obsession, and then you find out that the person standing in the way of your prize is black, like, good God, I mean, it was not going to end well.
No, you're absolutely right. And like just the fact that like he's so cocky and arrogant and felt that he deserved her, get out of here. Like that
Yeah.
makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
So Stacie finally gets off the phone, and of course Paul is just there being creepy. And he starts berating Stacie about dating Sean. And Stacie like ignores him and she just goes about her business. She's doing chores around the house. So she starts doing her laundry and Paul is just following her around, continuing to give her a hard time. At one point he starts demanding that she break up with Sean.
This guy's
And
relentless.
yeah, and remember she's like home alone.
Yeah.
She continues to say no and just like, stop, leave me alone, no. So Paul decides to go a different route and he decides to start pestering Stacie for sex.
Hmm.
And he would later admit that he, quote, touched her tit and asked if she wanted to fuck, end quote. Again, these are his words.
She's 16, dude. You just molested a minor.
Yes, he just
Yeah.
molested a minor. For a grown man to touch the breast of a 16-year-old is foul.
Disgusting.
Remember at the beginning when I said he had 0 redeeming qualities?
Yeah, you were right.
Mm-hmm. So this very unwelcome and unwanted touch was not cool with Stacie, and she told him no. And she tried to get away from him, but Paul continues to follow her throughout the house, just harassing her. And when Stacie goes into her bedroom, because she's still got her laundry, so she's going to put her laundry away, Paul out of nowhere pushes her onto the bed and holds her hands down as like he pinned her onto the bed with his body. And again, this part is straight from Paul's later confession, so remember, these are not my words. He says that he told her, quote, all I wanted to do was fuck her and then I would leave, end quote. And then he proceeds to threaten her by saying, quote, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, end quote. So Stacie is recognizing that this is a threat that he is going to rape her. So she tells him, okay, I will have sex with you.
Wow. Can you imagine how scared this girl, and I stress girl, was at this time? And she already told her mom how uncomfortable this guy made her. So why on earth was he allowed to just come and go like that?
He just would let himself in, and
I am not thrilled with the parents in this situation. I get that he's a pest and he's a nuisance, but he clearly sparked fear in your children. So
Right.
take steps to make sure he doesn't get in the house.
So Paul backs off Stacie and she quickly gets up and starts fighting him. This like brave young woman begins scratching and hitting him with all of her strength. But unfortunately, he is able to pin her down again, and he tells her that if she continues to fight him, he will kill her.
God.
So he tells Stacie to take off her clothes, and she's pleading with him. She's like, "Why are you doing this to me? Like, I thought we were friends."
Yeah.
But he ignores her and demands she undress. And at this point, like, Stacie knows that Paul is dead serious. So she lowers her pants, and as she does that, the phone rings. So Stacie like quickly pulls her pants up, saying, "I have to get the phone. I got to answer that."
Yeah.
Well, Paul tells her, "You are not answering the phone and you need to get undressed." So again, Stacie is pleading with this fucking monster to leave her alone. At this point, she's like trying to bargain with him. Like, she won't tell anyone what he did. She won't tell anyone that he was there. Just please leave her alone. And as she attempts to run out of her bedroom, Paul pulls out a knife. And we would later find out when Paul returned to the house, like after Robert had left from his lunch break, Paul was armed with a box cutter, a survival knife, a butterfly knife, and a pistol.
Wow. Okay. So it's clear that he was planning something horrible, and it also instantly makes it premeditated,
Yeah, that's
whatever he
true. That's
does.
true.
Hmm.
Well, after Stacie sees the knife, she again tries to run. And in Paul's first confession, he would say that she, air quotes, fell into his knife.
Give me a break.
I know. Come on. So in reality, Paul stabbed Stacie, puncturing her heart, and then he twisted the knife and pulled it out of her, which does so much damage.
Yes, it does.
And he said that for a second, like Stacie just stared at him in shock. And then she stumbled out of her room across the hall and collapsed on the floor in Kristie's room.
Well, yeah. What else do you do? Like, what just
Right.
happened to me? And I don't know what that feeling is like.
I can't even imagine. So Paul goes after her, and when he sees that Stacie is still breathing, he proceeds to stomp on her throat several times. And at this point, 16-year-old Stacie Reed is dead.
I feel like she was doomed from the start. Like he went over there with the intention to rape, and killing her was already on the table as an option. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
if things went sideways, he was going to be ready because she was going to identify him. Which, newsflash, dude, she already told a million people she was scared of you. So, if something
Yeah.
happens to her, you become suspect numero uno. You know?
He's just a sick, sick person. And after this festering, cancerous little twit of a man is done brutally murdering a child, he decides to hang out in Stacie's home. He helps himself, he makes himself a glass of iced tea, and he sits down on the living room couch and he smokes cigarettes. While Stacie's body is laying just feet away from him.
He was waiting for the sister. I'll bet. Like because she was at school. So I'll bet you. And because like, if so, that takes it to a whole nother level because he has this sexual frenzy. Like he could have got out of there, killed Stacie, and got out of there, and probably evaded the law for a little bit. But why take a second victim? Like it must have been like some kind of something in his brain took over, and he couldn't stop it.
Well, now we're going to get to Kristie. So around 3 p.m. that day, and remember, Robert gets home just a little bit after 4. So around 3 p.m. that day, Kristie gets home from school, and as she gets to the door, she realizes it's locked, which is kind of strange, and she figures that Stacie must have gone to work. So she goes to reach for her key, the door flies open, and Paul is standing there.
God, can you freaking imagine?
I just imagine like her stomach had to drop. You know that feeling? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and of course she's shocked and unhappy to see that yet again Paul is at her house.
Mm-hmm.
And she's especially uneasy that the door had been locked, and she
Yeah.
asks him, "Where is Stacie?" So Paul calmly responds that Stacie's in her room. So Kristie goes to Stacie's room and no one is there. But as she turns around and her eyes scan the hallway, she can see into her own bedroom, and that's when she sees her sister's bloody, lifeless body on the floor.
What she must have. How do you even comprehend that?
Well, in the I Survived episode, Kristie talks about this, and she says she was just in complete shock. She dropped her school stuff on the floor, and she just started sobbing, and she is so heartbreaking in the episode because she's like, that's my sister, that's my best friend. And again, this reminded me so much of Jody. Remember Jody, her brain tried to reason that Risa had cut her finger on her earring or something.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Well, and she had to feel all of those things in front of the man who did it. So not only do you have to deal with those emotions, but then you have to switch into survival mode. And these are children
children.
having to
I
do this, to
know.
process this. Like, there's your sister, but also I'm in great danger.
So much danger. I can't imagine. And this whole time, Paul is just standing behind Kristie. And as if he couldn't get any worse than what I've already told you.
He's just soaking it all in.
Yeah. So
Wow.
now he demands that Kristie come with him down to the basement. And remember, even before finding out what Paul did to her sister, like, Kristie knows that Paul is fucking deranged.
Yeah, she knows he carries a knife and a gun. She knows
Mhm.
he's not welcome in the house, and she knows he's a fucking psychopath. So, or that her sister was terrified of. God.
She knows that he's not going to hesitate to hurt her if she doesn't obey everything he
Right.
says.
Right, because she sees what happens when you don't.
Yes. So Paul marches Kristie to the basement where he tells her to undress. And again, Kristie does this. And as she says in the Survived episode, she knew that Stacie would have put up one hell of a fight against this monster.
Mhm.
So Kristie reasons, like, in her head, okay, maybe if I don't fight back, just maybe he won't hurt me. Which I 100% get. Like, I think that my mind would work the same.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's 14. You know, her options are kinda
Mhm.
limited, and she's clearly overpowered, and she's at this guy's mercy. It's so sad.
It is. And this is the point where Paul rapes 14-year-old Kristie. When he's done, he begins to get dressed, and then he uses Kristie's own shoelaces to tie her ankles together and to tie her hands behind her back. And as he's doing this to her, they hear a knock at the front door.
Thank God. Somebody's here to stop
Well,
this.
no, sadly. So it turns out that Kristie had made plans with, like, a friend of hers, this little boy named Mark, to come
Mhm.
over and, like, hang out. And I think they were going to do their homework together. So Kristie knows it's her friend at the door. And, like, in the episode of I Survive, she talks about how she was so scared that Paul was going to open the door and hurt her friend, which I'm like, what? Like, a sweet angel she is. Like, this poor girl had just been
Yeah.
through, like, the literal worst thing that could happen to her. And the main thing on her mind is, oh my God, my friend is going to get hurt. That is such an amazing human right there. I don't know that I could be that selfless.
But isn't that a glimpse into the innocence of a child's mind? Dr. Wish Buzz was here. He would tell you all about it, I'm sure. But she's just got raped by an adult, a grown
Mhm.
ass man. Like, she's 14. She should be worrying about friends and homework and all these things. But now she's forced into a very adult situation at a really young age.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I mean, we'll find out at the end, kind of how she's doing. But, like, she is such an amazing survivor. So by the time Paul gets upstairs to the door, like, thank goodness the kid had left. So while Paul is upstairs, Kristie manages to, like, untie her hands behind her back, and she's completely naked, and she's trying to sort of, like, scoot herself across the floor to there's this, like, little open space underneath the basement steps,
Mhm.
and she's trying to hide there. So Paul comes back downstairs. He grabs Kristie by the neck and he proceeds to choke this poor child until she loses consciousness. So once Kristie is passed out, Paul begins violently slashing her throat with one of the knives he brought. He slits her wrists and then he stabs her in the stomach. And this knife attack was so brutal. Kristie's neck and throat would require over 60 stitches.
Wow. That's insane.
And wait, it gets worse. The doctors who saved her lives would later testify that the knife wound to her stomach came within a centimeter of her aorta. So
Man.
if the knife had hit her aorta, she would have bled out in minutes.
Yeah, instantly.
The knife wounds to her neck and throat came within half a centimeter of her carotid artery. She's an absolute miracle for surviving this ridiculously brutal attack.
I can't. It's absolutely incredible and how inspirational. I mean, this girl was
Right?
14, and I
14.
want to check out the episode because I'd love to hear her talk about it now, thinking back.
So Paul at this point believes that Kristie is dead, and he leaves this poor baby on the cold basement floor. He goes upstairs and he decides to help himself to another glass of iced tea. And then he hangs out for a little bit longer, just chilling in their house, and then he leaves.
This guy had no urgency whatsoever.
No, and for him to be so calm after the vile atrocities that he just committed is absolutely unfathomable. How can someone be that evil?
It's about control. That's literally it. So he couldn't have Stacie, so everyone around him was going to pay for it. And I feel like this guy must have been watching her. I mean, being a neighbor helps, I guess, but he must have watched her, knew her schedule, knew her parents' and step-parents' schedule.
Yes.
That's why he was being so calm and collected, because he probably had hours until somebody came home.
You're right. Well, we know that Robert gets home shortly, but I'm sure he knew that Robert got home a little bit after 4
Yeah.
each day.
But if it was 20 minutes, he cut it close.
Yeah, he really did.
Wow.
So now at this point, we are right back where we started. About 4:15 p.m., Robert gets home, finds Stacie's body, finds Kristie, who, as we know, is somehow, by the grace of God, able to whisper Paul Powell when authorities ask her, who did this? So police catch up with and they arrest Paul Powell the following day, which is January 30th, 1999. And he had been hiding out at the home of the girlfriend of a friend of his. And when they arrest Paul, they find a duffel bag with the knives and the gun that I'd mentioned. And this is so terrible. Paul hadn't even bothered to clean the knives off. One was still coated in Stacie's blood.
Wow. So he was just going to dump the bag somewhere, probably in the water, I would guess.
That's what I'm guessing. But why he didn't do it, I have no idea. So when police have Paul in custody, of course, this arrogant little shitbag starts running his mouth. And when investigators ask him why did you kill Stacie, he responds with, quote, "Because she was stupid," end quote.
What, meaning she didn't give it up willingly?
He's just
At
it's
16?
he's already acting like a bratty little shit. And then he goes on to tell police that he and Stacie got in an argument because he, quote, "didn't agree with interracial dating," end quote.
Bullshit. This is what a canned response when law enforcement's looking at you. I mean, this was about his fragile little male ego, and that's it.
Oh, wait. And then he goes on and he tells police that Stacie's the one who started it and she attacked him. And that's when she, quote, got stuck on his knife.
I'm surprised he's making excuses, because for someone so proud of everything he is and everything he does, now all of a sudden he's kind of, like you said, a whiny little bitch now that, oh, she fell on the knife. She did this. Own up to it, man. You're cocky.
Exactly.
You know?
you wanna be this big man?
Then be a man.
So when they ask him about Kristie and why he attempted to kill her, he nonchalantly explained that he had to kill her because she was a witness and he would go to jail if she lived.
I mean, I figured that part, but the rape's not necessary. So there was more to it, because he would have just killed her then, not raped her.
Right, and it's like, you're going to jail regardless, you friggin' asshat.
Right. Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
so Kristie ends up spending months and months in the hospital clinging to life, but as we know, this girl is so unbelievably strong, and thanks to her wonderful team of surgeons and doctors and nurses, she makes it and Kristie survives.
That's awesome.
So now we're going to fast forward to May of 2000, and this is when Paul's first trial begins. If you notice, I did say first trial because shit is about to get wild, as if we weren't already there. And just before I start, the prosecutor's name is Paul. His name is Paul Ebert. So from here on
Another
out,
Paul.
what?
Another Paul.
Yeah. So I'm just going to call him Ebert as we go on so we don't get confused. So while Paul's in custody awaiting trial, he had continued to act like a complete and total asshole. And he made threats about killing prison guards and escaping. He started writing letters to Ebert, the prosecutor, telling him to, quote, watch his back, end quote. And these letters mentioned more racist shit like anyone who isn't white should die. Blah, blah, blah. And so when the trial starts, throughout this trial, he is just sitting there completely remorseless, occasionally smirking. Like, he acted like he could not have cared less. He did admit on the stand that his original plan was to kill the entire Culver Reed family, like both girls and then the mother, Lorraine, and Robert, the fiance.
But why?
I have no idea. That's the thing. For as much as this asshat runs his mouth, we don't know anything.
Oh, if he was obsessed with the girl, he could have raped her and killed her, and that would have been the end of it. Like, why start knocking off every single person in her family too? It's
I
insane.
don't know. But the whole time he's doing this, he's like the whole trial and everything, he's bragging about how much he wants the death penalty. Like, okay, you're cool.
Yeah, good.
And I know this is like a little bit confusing, but keep in mind, like, just because of how I laid the story out, but keep in mind that to police and during the trial, Paul never admitted to when he was attempting to rape Stacie, like in the minutes before he murdered her.
But why didn't they ask?
I think they did ask and he said no.
Hmm.
And he never told anyone about how he made her take her pants off or how he said, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Okay.
So, all right. In the state of Virginia, murder is not eligible for the death penalty by itself. Like, there has to be an aggravating factor. So there has to be another felony that occurs at the same time, like a rape or a robbery or something else to go along with the murder in order for the perpetrator to be sentenced to death.
I mean, like assault with a knife, a deadly weapon, a felony. You know, like I feel like that should have factored in.
You're right. Like, I was kind of thinking about this when I was writing it, so I don't quite understand that part. But like, I just kept seeing unless there was like a rape or an armed robbery. So
Yeah, it's a mitigating factor, but I just feel like the amount of premeditation in this and his real intentions should have been factored in. But
agreed.
whatever.
Well, the prosecutor Ebert, he argues that, Paul had raped Kristie, and one of Paul's friends had actually testified that Paul stole $37 off of Stacie's dresser. So Ebert was definitely pushing for the death penalty, and
Yeah.
because, he's like, he raped Kristie, so on and so forth. Well, the defense's argument was basically like, yeah, this guy is definitely a racist asshole, but he shouldn't get the death penalty. Like, we know he killed her and he's just not cool, but we shouldn't kill him. Like, that was their whole argument. So ultimately, Paul was found guilty and convicted of capital murder in the death of Stacie Reed and in the abduction, rape, and attempted capital murder of Kristie Reed. The jury decides that Paul Powell should be put to death, and later that year, during the sentencing phase, a judge agreed with the jury and sentences Paul to death.
Perfect.
Well, you would think that this would be the end of the story. But wait, there's more.
There's call now. Save shipping.
Paul Warner Powell was still not done being a putrid cesspool of bile, not by a long shot.
Great.
So, pretty soon, Paul and his defense attorneys filed an appeal. And the basis for this goes back to what I just talked about, how in Virginia, the death penalty is only allowed if there is another felony crime to go along with the murder. And they argued that the rape of Kristie shouldn't count because he didn't murder Kristie. So Paul and the defense team are basically like, he only killed Stacie. He didn't try to rape her, so it shouldn't count. And even though someone had said that Paul had stolen that $37, I think that ended up qualifying as hearsay, so that didn't count either.
Yeah, the money part I get because you have to prove it. Like if he's found with $37 on him, or it would almost have to have her fingerprints because he could be like, it's my $37. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
but he did try to rape her. So
right, but they
there's
don't
that.
know that yet. So, in 2001, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that the capital murder and death sentence weren't eligible in this crime, and they overturned the decision saying there wasn't enough evidence to prove that there was another felony. And, they were basically like, we're going to have a new trial, but this time, first-degree murder with life in prison is the most that we can give him. So clearly, this is a huge bummer for Kristie, Lorraine, Robert, and basically everyone. Because, let's be real, no one is on Paul's side. I don't care how you feel about any of the things he did, but there is no possible way to defend a racist pedophile murderer.
No, and I feel like even sitting on his side of the courtroom, you'll get the side eye. Like you get a label on you just for defending him, even just in spirit.
Yes, exactly. All right, so we already know that Paul is a cocky, arrogant ass pimple, but hold on, because his dumbassery is about to blow your damn mind. I'm so serious. Buckle in. So Paul's feeling pretty good because he got out of the death sentence.
Didn't he say he originally wanted that?
Yes. So I don't know. Yeah, go figure. He is such an idiot. But the whole beating the death penalty thing had definitely boosted Paul's already overly inflamed ego. And he's apparently bragging to everyone in prison how great it was to, quote, rape a virgin, end quote, referring to Kristie, and boasting to other inmates about killing. And again, these are not my words. I want to continue to stress this, but he would boast to everyone about killing an N-word lover.
I'm going to throw up.
Right? I told
this is
you
insane.
this was sick. But this isn't even the end of his shittiness.
I hope something very bad happens to him at the end of this story, but continue.
Oh, it does. It does. Karma's coming, I promise. So Paul incorrectly believed that because his death penalty had been overturned, that he could no longer be up for the death penalty due to the US's double jeopardy laws. And for anyone who doesn't know, in the United States, we have some, what I personally think are stupid, bogus ass laws saying that once someone has been acquitted or found not guilty, they cannot be tried again for the same crime.
That exists for a reason. If you're really innocent and you're tried for a crime and found innocent and you are actually innocent, you don't need stuff coming back to get you years
for
later.
the rest of your life, right? But in certain situations, it's awful. Well, this empowered Paul's douchiness, and he started writing more letters. And y'all know how much I love a good handwritten letter.
It's very effective.
Well, the first letter that Paul wrote was to Paul Ebert, who, as I mentioned, was the prosecutor in this case. And I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I will definitely, because it's quite long. You can Google it and find it. We'll put a link. But I will definitely share the highlights. And forewarning, trigger warning, whatever you want to call it, these letters are foul, and the language used is beyond reprehensible.
I tell you what, I stand behind this decision 100% because You won't find the unfiltered versions on TV or in the newspapers. So I feel
Mhm.
like it's important for everybody to hear the full version of what he said. As hard as it is to listen to, whatever you're going to say, I feel like it's important to hear in its kind of entirety, and it gives you a good glimpse into the guy's psyche.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that you hear, like, at least the majority.
Hmm.
So, the letter to Paul Ebert, the prosecutor, goes like this, quote, Mr. Ebert, since I have already been indicted on first-degree murder and the Virginia Supreme Court said that I can't be charged with capital murder again, I figured I would tell you the rest of what happened on January 29th, 1999, to show you how stupid all of y'all motherfuckers are. Y'all should have known that there is more to the story than what I told by what I said. End quote. So, the next part of this letter, he goes through everything that happened that day, how he argued with Stacie about her relationship with Sean, how he attempted to sexually assault her, how he stabbed her, and how he sat down and had a glass of iced tea.
Hmm.
And then he went into the horrific assault and attempted murder of Kristie. So after he goes through that, he proceeds to write, quote, I would like to thank you for saving my life. I know you're probably wondering how you saved my life, so I'll tell you. You saved my life by fucking up. There were two main fuck ups you made that saved me. The first was the way you worded my capital murder indictment. The second was the comment you made in your closing argument when you said, we won't know because he won't tell us. One more time, thank you. Now you all know everything that happened in that house at, redacted, McLean Street on January 29th, 1999. I guess I forgot to mention these events when I was being questioned. Ha ha, psych.
He wrote "haha psych."
Mm-hmm.
He is a douchebag.
Right? I knew what y'all would be able to prove in court, so I told you what you already knew. Stacie was dead and no one else was in the house, so I knew y'all would never know everything she went through unless she came back to life. Since the Supreme Court said I can't be charged with capital murder again, I can tell you what I just told you because I no longer have to worry about the death penalty. And y'all are supposed to be so goddamn smart. I can't believe that y'all thought I told you everything.
He is in for a rude awakening. You can't say these things.
Well, it's too late now. Nothing you
Hmm.
can do about it. So fuck you, you fat, cocksucking, cum guzzling gutter slut. I guess I'll see your bitch ass on December 18th at trial, because I'm not pleading to shit. Tell the family to be ready to testify and relive it all again, because if I have to suffer for the next 50 or 60 years, or however long, then they can suffer the torment of reliving what happened for a couple of days. I'm gone. Fuck you and anyone like you or that associates with people like you. I almost forgot. Fuck your God, too. Jesus knows how to suck dick real good. Did you teach him? Well, die a slow, painful, miserable death. See ya, punk. Do you just hate yourself for being so stupid and for fucking up and saving me? Sincerely, Paul Powell. End quote.
I'm like wrapping my head around everything you just said. And he's a special kind of, like, I'm not even going to respond to this
Speechless.
guy's, yeah, I'm not even going to respond to this guy's words because he's doing a pretty good job of telling you what a piece of shit he is with his own
Mm-hmm.
words. But I will say that I believe Paul is a complete and utter narcissist, and his need to
Mm-hmm.
gloat about what he did proves that. And this wasn't about, I don't think it was about attention in the media, like, or being in some exclusive killers club. Like, to me, it was about being in control and taking what he wanted without regard for anyone except himself.
You're 100% right. Like there is no response to this because it is just so utterly ridiculous and unnecessary.
To do it is one thing. To do it and not feel bad about it is another thing. But then gloating about it and rubbing the family's face in it takes it to a whole other level. That there needs to be a special place in hell for people like this. lower than your regular killers.
I mean, we're not even done with his letters. You've gone through a ton of true crime cases. Like, I believe that he is the worst human being ever.
He's up there. He's up
He's
there.
up
'Cause
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the other guys that, like, some felt bad about it, some would apologize to the family, did horrific things, but then would apologize. This guy
Mhm.
is something.
Well, it gets worse because this man is as cruel as he is dumb and arrogant. The next letter he sent was to Lorraine, the mother
The
of his
mom.
victims, Stacie and Kristie. And included with this letter was a picture of a woman who looked strikingly similar to Stacie Reed. And
To her
in this
daughter.
picture, the woman was like almost naked. So Paul writes, quote, Lorraine, I was wondering if you might be able to help me think of something. I found this picture in a magazine and it kind of looks like someone I know or used to know, but I can't think of the person's name. I think you know the person too. So I was wondering if you could tell me the name of the person this picture resembles so I can quit racking my brain trying to think of it. I would appreciate it. If you don't know the person I'm talking about, ask Kristie or Redacted, because I know they know who I'm thinking of. If you talk to the person I'm talking about, please give her my address and tell her to write me. End quote. Yeah. Like, to write that
I
to the
don't have anything to
mother
say.
of the child you murdered. Well, Paul wrote several more letters, including one to his girlfriend at the time.
Who
And
is
girl,
dating
if
him?
you are listening, the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well,
Run.
in this letter, he tells his girlfriend that Kristie is going to testify against him. And in the letter, in part, says, quote, I was wondering if you could get somebody to go to a payphone and call Kristie and tell her she better tell the cops that she lied to them and tell her she better not testify against me or she's gonna die. And
Who else would have done this, dude? It's beyond passing the buck to some random intruder. Come
right.
on.
So, like, on top of everything else, now he's just openly threatening a witness. So, of course, these letters are taken to the judge. Like, I imagine the prosecutor was like, gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to no surprise, the judge is none too pleased. So, on January 13th, 2003, the new trial began against Paul Powell, and this time, prosecutors had Paul's own letters to use as evidence of the attempted rape of Stacie Reed
I'm
prior
loving
to her
this.
murder.
Yep.
And in addition to hearing these letters read out loud, jurors were also treated to Paul's demonic writings, ramblings, and doodles while in prison.
Hmm.
These gems were full of more bigoted and derogatory rhetoric, such as, quote, everyone who ain't white needs to die, end quote.
So how did this guy survive prison at all? First of all, I mean, I'm sure there's other hate groups that you could join. Like they probably meet once a month or a little
Mm-hmm.
potluck planning. Who are we going to hate this month? But
Yeah.
I'm surprised Lawrence from Cell Block 4 didn't fuck him up for this unique outlook. Especially if he ran his mouth to prisoners the way he ran it on the outside world.
Well, the jury was not amused by Paul. And I mean, not only did his own gloating and arrogance disgust jurors, but they were also made aware of prior convictions. Like he had convictions from before the assault and murder of Kristie and Stacie Reed.
Mm-hmm.
So these run-ins that he had had with the law, these included convictions of contributing to the delinquency of a minor and a few counts of larceny. And I'm not 100% clear on the delinquency of a minor charge, but I believe it had something to do with like harboring a minor at his home and providing alcohol. So clearly Paul is a deranged monster and he needed to be put down. Well, this second trial was definitely a different vibe than the first one.
You think?
Gone was Paul's arrogant and cocky attitude, and I don't believe that there was one shit-eating smirk to be seen from him.
I love it.
In fact, actually, when the 911 call that Robert placed after finding Stacie dead and Kristie
Mhm.
clinging to life was played, our big tough man couldn't handle it and he started crying.
Shh, pussy.
Right? As the tape played, the entire courtroom could literally hear the horror and pain and the desperation in Robert Culver's voice as he's
Right.
frantically begging the 911 operator for help. And, he's describing the brutal violence inflicted on his stepdaughters. And in the background, everyone could hear the gurgles and cries of Kristie, as she's literally struggling to hang on to life.
Good. And you know what? I hope he heard it on repeat every single night that he laid in that cold, dark prison cell.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree. And there was a really great article in the Fredericksburg Freelance Star that stated in part, quote, "For the past 4 years, Paul Warner Powell has portrayed himself as a brash young man full of hatred, bent on destruction with an utter disdain for the law. But yesterday, the former Spotsylvania County resident, whose bravado has put him in peril of the death chamber, shattered that self-portrait of invincibility. Powell, 24, looked like he might become ill as prosecutors played a tape of a 911 call from the day he killed a Manassas area teenager and savagely attacked her younger sister." End quote. Paul's attorney actually had to ask for a recess so the crybaby could get his shit together.
But you wish you didn't write those letters.
I know. And in the article I just referenced, the best line was, quote, "When Powell quietly left the courtroom, his face was red and tears streamed down his cheeks." End quote.
Mm.
So the trial went on for a few more days with just this heartbreaking yet incredibly powerful testimony from different law enforcement, the trauma surgeon who saved Kristie's life, and, of course, Robert, Lorraine, and Kristie. And in the end, Paul essentially signed his own death warrant and was, for the second time, sentenced to die. And for possibly the first time on the show, I want to give a genuine round of applause for the American justice system.
They eventually got it right.
Good job.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to bring Stacie back, but I feel like justice was served in this case.
Hmm.
Oh, and when Paul was found guilty and sentenced to death, the tears were back. He was reduced to this pathetic, blubbering little weenie. It was
I'm
great.
so happy to hear that.
I know. Feel good,
Hmm.
So Paul spent the next several years filing appeals, all of which were denied. And if I was one of the people who had to review his appeal, I would just keep responding by sending him copies of his own vile letters he wrote with big old smiley faces on them.
Yeah, right.
In kind of an interesting move, Paul was actually given the choice of how he was executed. He was given the option of death by lethal injection or by old Sparky, the
Well, that's what
electric
we were
chair.
talking about last week.
Yes, at the beginning of the episode, this was the case. So Paul chose the electric chair. I don't know that would be my choice, but well, finally, on March 18th, 2010, the state of Virginia executed 31-year-old Paul Warner Powell.
31.
And 31.
What a waste of life.
And you know what? For a guy who had so much to say, he was surprisingly quiet that day and he gave no last words. He was declared deceased at 9:09 p.m. Kristie, Lorraine, Robert, and Paul Ebert, the prosecutor, they were all there to witness it. And I know that there's often anti-death penalty groups or anti-death penalty, the groups that protest outside of the jail on the day of execution, but they must all have been really busy that day because I saw one article say that less than half a dozen people showed up. So, sorry, not sorry.
Each and every one of those people need to sit down and rethink what they're actually protesting. If they think this guy had any business being allowed to walk on this earth, then they're as misguided as Paul was. Take 5 minutes, talk to the family about their daughters. Read an article about what he did to these people. Read his letters.
Exactly. Read
Yeah.
one of his own letters. And I didn't even read you guys the worst one.
Yeah. So if you think he has any right to be walking around alive, think again.
Yeah. Now, I will say that he did speak to Lorraine and Kristie the night before his execution, and
Who
he
cares?
I know, that's how I feel, but he apologized and he was reportedly remorseful. He did state that his crimes were senseless and pointless, and the
Yeah.
the thing is, though, that Lorraine would later say that she felt he was remorseful in his own way, and regardless of what we
Whatever.
think, if she feels okay, like,
Yeah.
she's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the years since that fateful day in January 1999, the Culver Reed family have had some good times and bad times. Lorraine and Robert actually did get married following everything, but the entire situation just proved to be too much for the couple to withstand, and sadly, they separated and later divorced. And that sucks, but I don't think that's super uncommon for people who have like lost a child to split up later.
We're going to be covering a story where that happened, but there's some cool stuff that happens too. So later on,
Ooh, spoiler alert.
next year, 2025.
Well, as far as I know, Robert is actually still living in Virginia. Lorraine relocated to Ohio and she has since remarried. She wrote a book under her new married name, which is Lorraine Huberry, and her book is entitled Heal My Wounds, Leave My Scars, a mother's story of loss, despair, and her journey back to hope.
Hmm.
And in a testament to like how truly brave and resilient that Lorraine and Kristie are, they started the Stacie Foundation,
Oh,
spelled
wow.
STACIE, which is how Stacey's name was spelled. And that stands for Strive to Achieve Compassion, Intervention, and Education.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and their mission statement is, quote, to promote healing and offer hope while walking side by side with survivors of violent crime, end
Very
quote.
cool.
Yeah, and Lorraine has said that hope and healing, her hope and healing came from giving back to others who had suffered tragedy, which I always think is so beyond incredible when people can use these horrific events to bring hope and comfort to others, like John Walsh did and the parents of Polly Class. And
You have to, though, because otherwise you soak in it. You just sit there and these bad thoughts fester. So if you have to get some kind of good to come out of it, or else what's the
yeah,
point? Why?
what's right. No, I totally agree. And I think
Mhm.
they're so awesome for doing that. I'm not really sure what Kristie's up to these days. It seems like I'm going to be honest. I really didn't go digging. She's been through enough.
Yeah.
It does seem that she's kind of stayed out of the limelight, other than, like I said, the appearance on I Survived, which was season 3, episode 18. If anyone wants to watch, I believe she got married, and I know she had at least one child of her own. And there were actually like a couple stories about how she and Lorraine are still really, really close with Paul Ebert, the
Mhm.
prosecutor. And there was like a story about Kristie introducing her baby to Paul. So that's really sweet.
Mhm.
And I just sincerely hope that she is doing well and thriving because she deserves nothing but wonderful things.
I bet you it was hard for her to have a relationship for a while.
Oh, absolutely. How do you ever trust anyone ever again?
Yeah.
But that, Ed and listeners, is the incredible survival story of Kristie Reed and the ultimate tale of poetic justice in regard to Paul Powell, who I can only assume is spending the afterlife painfully and torturously burning in hell with his idol, Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for sharing that incredibly tragic story. I
Yeah.
don't know if thanks is the right word, but
No.
you've been a real friggin' downer ever since Thanksgiving. Jesus.
It's what I do.
And I'm not gonna lie, for all the awful things that happened, there was a satisfying element to this. To watch this guy basically cheat death and then gloat about it, and his own cocky ass words seal his fate is pretty awesome.
It really is.
It does not take the place. That joy, it does not take the place of Stacey's life. And the bottom line is none of this should have happened.
No, it shouldn't have. And it was just, you kept asking why, and there was just absolutely no response. There's no reason why.
This guy thought he was bigger than the justice system and could do whatever he want to whoever he want, and proved he could not.
Yep. Well, be prepared for next week because I have a perpetrator who rivals this guy.
But you know what? I'm gonna bring a story. How about that? How about we skip yours and I tell a story about a puppy frolicking in a field who loses his way, but then finds it, and so we'll keep it.
Is this Billy Madison, the puppy who lost his way,
I was
by
like, why is
Kristie
this-
Taylor?
I am significantly dumber after listening to everything you just said.
That is such a great movie.
That's awesome.
Well, if you can't wait until next week for another vile perpetrator, you can check us out on Facebook, Insta, TikTok at Murder Unscripted. Email us, murderunscriptedpod@gmail.com. Check out our website. Please, 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 please like, rate, and subscribe. We would so very much appreciate it. And I think that is all I got, other than to remind you that karma, y'all, is a real ass thing.
Yeah, it is.
That being said, we hope everyone is having a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much for listening. You guys are the gift that keeps giving.
You're the best.
So we'll see you next week. And remember, perverts don't wear signs that say they're perverts.
This guy's sign would be a billboard. He would be the Flava Flav of pervert
Oh,
signs.
100%.
See ya.
Bye. Paul Warner Powell was still not being done. Paul Warner Powell was still not done being. Why am I dyslexic?
Wow. So he was just gonna dump that's my plan, is he was just gonna not my plan.
And Stacie, and just before I start, the prosecutor's name is Paul. His name is Paul Ebert. So from here on
Another
out,
Paul.
what?
Another Paul.
Yeah. So I'm just going to call him Ebert as we go on so we don't get confused.
Come on. Call him Paul 1 and Paul 2. Just to keep people guessing.
Paul 1.0, Paul 2.0.
Exactly.
So he leaves this poor baby girl on the cold basement floor, and he goes upstairs and decides to help himself to another glass of iced tea.
So not only is this dude a murderer, a pedophile, and a murderer, he also, iced tea's not cheap.
Right? The knife wounds to her neck and throat came within half a centimeter of her carotid.
Her carotid artery. She knew karate, fortunately.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall for when Paul's attorney was like, double jeopardy didn't count this time, you friggin' idiot. Like,
Right.
I would love to know how that conversation went.
It's probably stomach dropped, like when you get caught plagiarizing or something. It's like,
Like, oh shit.
This is also more intense than plagiarizing. I just want to make it clear that plagiarizing a document probably didn't feel as bad as this, given that it's the death penalty.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little different.